That's a look at the water that overflowed into a Dundas neighborhood from the Sydenham Creek during last week's 75-millimeter downpour. There have been accusations that debris blocking a grate was the biggest cause of the flooding. And while not accepting any blame, the city has since set up a relief program for homeowners who had significant uninsured flood damage. Alan Hansell is executive director of the Stewards of Cootes Watershed and the Red Hill Watershed. He joins us to share some thoughts on what's needed to help prevent future problems. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Thank you, Doug.
Pleasure to meet you. That was a lot of water that came down in a very short time. You were out and about that night, so describe what you saw, first of all.
I didn't appear on the scene until about 8:45. At that point, there was a Sydenham Creek, goes through some older sections of Dundas, and it's very constricted. There are either concrete walls or gay-beam baskets. There's no floodplain because we've built on top of that. So there's not a lot of place for this water to go naturally. There is one problem area just before the stream goes underground into a culvert, and things traditionally have hung up there, and there have been flooding problems in the past. I can remember in the early 80s there were some ice jams there that caused a bunch of flooding. And so I had gone and checked out another area. I was back 45 minutes later. In that 45 minutes, backhoe had come onto the scene, cleared enough of the debris away that all the water was now contained within the creek.
We're just looking at some pictures of York and Cootes Drive, and it's a nice, quiet little creek most days.
Most days.
But when we get those kinds of torrential, once-in-a-lifetime weather events, and this wasn't once in a lifetime, as you pointed out, we've seen it before, but that was a dramatic downpour. And there was some other flooding in other parts of the city, but this was the most dramatic. And when we looked at the pictures, it was like, holy cow, where did all this come from? Whatever happened to all of the safeguards we put into our system in the past that we spent millions of dollars on? And then when you looked at the Dundas Star News picture that was, 4 days after? And there was all of this debris jamming that one pipe vent screen. And you have said all along, this was preventable. This could have been dealt with if we had done some due diligence, actually done some cleanup when it was recommended to do it.
Yeah, we recommended to the Hamilton to City Council and their Public Works Committee that there be a program that we thought that we could help out with to make sure that debris was not jamming the creeks. We can't predict where this happens. I just want to go back and touch on this once-in-a-lifetime aspect. All of that is out the window. City planners, Conservation Authority planners, everybody has always worked to these things called 100-year rains and 500-year rains. So we have had the Red Hill Creekway flood out twice in 3 years with rains that were described as being over 100-year rains. So that's a very short 100 years in that 36 months.
That's called climate change, isn't it?
Well, I believe it is, absolutely. And the reason is, we can argue about whether this winter is warmer or colder, or what this means or that means. But what we're seeing now is different weather patterns.
Yes.
Different weather patterns than we've seen ever before. And it results in two things. One is you get these intense localized rains. Happened in the Red Hill twice. It's happened on the East Mountain twice. It's happened on the West Mountain twice. We all know what happened in Burlington a few years ago. The year before that, it was Etobicoke. This is the world that we live in. And weather patterns are now different. And yes, it is global warming, but it's very hard to adapt to this because the other thing that meteorologists tell me is that part of the changing weather patterns is that all of the rain that we get is now getting clustered together more. And the ground was more than saturated when this happened, and so all that 70 millimeters went straight into the creek. And this is the world that we have to deal with. Now, the whole point about this is there's precious little that you can do about this. Do you want to recreate a floodplain in Dundas and wipe out half the buildings there? That's not practical. The one thing that everybody agrees that you can do is to make sure the creeks are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that is to quickly move the water away. And when you have debris built up in them, that's going to cause problems for you. So it's been our experience, because we have pulled out 330,000 pounds of litter and debris out of the creeks in Dundas and West Hamilton, everything that flows into Cootes Paradise, that many debris jams start with something artificial. A pallet, a guardrail, a shopping cart, absolutely. And then everything else hangs on to that.
Yep.
Now, in this case, I want to be very careful and say that we have no information, and nothing that I saw would indicate that that was a contributing factor here. I didn't examine everything. I don't know if it was or if it wasn't. No information to say that. It was an amazing amount of woody debris in there. Limbs, logs, things that build up in the creeks, things that build up on the floodplain and then get lifted into the creeks. And here's our point.
And things that may build up that are on we saw the Calm Creek, a tree falls down, it's 6 feet away, not a problem, until there's 8 foot of fresh water on top, and all of a sudden it's flotsam and jetsam, isn't it?
Absolutely, and just a staggering amount. So there are other municipalities who do deal with this. Toronto has a program. Edmonton has a program to go and clean out the creeks. And somebody just this week on Facebook told me that he does this job for the city of Brantford. Yet we have nothing like this. Now, our group is there anyways.
So explain, what do we have? What's Public Works' responsibility in all of this?
So,
because you have hundreds of volunteers who are willing to do this.
Yep.
You need some financial help to pull this off.
Sure, they don't organize themselves, and we have thousands of people out there every year.
So explain, if they've got this elsewhere, what is the status here? So we don't see this again.
Well, a part of it is somebody needs to claim ownership of the storm shed, okay? So in the lower city of Hamilton, everything goes into grates, it goes into big pipes, sanitary and storm come together, and everything goes to Woodward, unless of course it rains a lot. In that case, everything, including the sewage, now goes into the creeks. Now, putting that little issue aside, the problem is that we're inundated with this water, and it's coming in so quickly, and in the suburbs, on most places in the mountain, what happens with the storm catchment at the end of your driveway is that is simply a pipe to a creek. All of that goes into the creek runs down and gets overwhelmed, and nobody in the city, the creeks are not the responsibility of the Parks Department, they're not the responsibility of the Water Department, they're not the responsibility of the Forest Department, and nobody has claim over them. And that's probably the first thing that needs to be rectified, that the creeks are part of our storm shed. The creeks are what carry our water away so we don't get flooding, and a specific department in the city of Hamilton needs to be responsible for that.
They're the natural watershed, not the pipes. Now, we know Public Works, $1,000 if you apply, so there's going to be some financial help. Councillor Vanderbeek got that going. We're under a minute, so very quickly, there are going to be cleanups this weekend. Tell folks when, where, how they can help.
Okay, so we do cleanups every weekend from March until December, until the snow forces us out. So we're going to be meeting in Dundas at 64 Hat Street. It is the Valley City Manufacturing Building right across the street from the Shed Brewery. We're going to be in Red Hill. There's some a godforsaken little creek that pops up on Burlington Street beside the Pioneer Station between Strathern and Parkdale. We're going to be there 1 o'clock on Saturday, and we're going to be Sunday 1 o'clock on Hat Street. And we welcome people to come out and join us and help with this. And for all that money that they're paying out, we propose that we could probably have saved them $80,000 a year in not having to make those payments if they put a proper program into place, and that our program would end up saving the city money, not costing them, and they still didn't really give it serious consideration. One business owner is claiming $100,000 worth of damage. I'd like to see how many payouts are necessary and what the true cost of this is, because it really does seem to be penny wise and pound foolish.
City Matters at noon, 4, 6, and 10 p.m. on Cable 14 and anytime on cable14now.com.